All right, move this over. This here. Okay, welcome everybody to a Common Sense Reading Series featuring this afternoon's readers, Daniel Biegelson and Charlotte Samuels. For those of you who are attending for the first time, I'm Jordan Stempelman. I started this series in Kansas City, Missouri, about 12 years ago. All the readings this spring were virtual, and I've gone that format since the pandemic. But starting in the fall of 23, I'm sorry, starting in the fall, what are we in 2022, I will move to a hybrid format where half the readings will remain virtual and half will be housed at KCAI's campus gallery. So I'm really excited to get back in person, but I love this format where we can invite people who may not be able to pass through Kansas City. I've archived past readings on my website. I'm going to put the link right now into the chat. And that way you can check out some of the other Dynamite readers. We're going to have 2 tonight. And in the next couple of days, this reading will appear on, I believe I'll put it on the main page at first, and then it'll be in the archives for anyone who wants to check it out later on. I also want to mention that this event was made possible by generous contributions from the creative writing program at the Kansas City Institute. Before I introduce this afternoon's readers, please feel free to use the reaction emojis at any point during the readings and participate in the chat. Following the reading, there will be a brief Q&A. So please post any questions you may have during the reading or immediately following. You can post those in the chat as well, and I'll be sure to add behalf. Okay, so our first reader this afternoon will be Daniel Biegelson. Daniel is the author of the book Of Being Neighbors that was released by Ricochet Editions, and the chapbook Only the Borrowed Light, which came out through Verse. He serves as the director of the Visiting Writers Series at Northwest Missouri State University, where he also works as an editor for the great literary magazine, Laurel Review. His poems have appeared in or are forthcoming from the Denver Quarterly, Diagram, Field, Mid-American Review, Rhino, The Spectacle, Typo, and others. He hails from New Jersey, holds an MFA from the University of Montana, an MA from the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and he lives near Kansas City with his wife and his children. Please welcome Daniel Biegelson.
Thank you, Jordan, for hosting us today and for this reading series. It's awesome, and thank you, Charlotte, for reading with me. It's exciting. I'm looking forward to hearing your work. And thank you, everyone, for joining us in this kind of virtual space. Yeah, I'm going to read a few poems from my book, my first book, which is called Of Being Neighbors, and this is it. So if you're interested, you can always pick up a copy. The title is a play on my favorite poet, George Oppin's book, Of Being Numerous. And the book is intimately linked to his in the sense that it explores issues of community and how we sort of live together in said community. Anyway, I'll read a few poems. Yeah, thank you for joining us again. This is called The Light Walks Other Avenues. It's got an epigraph from Eileen Miles. I can connect any two things. That's God. I would have followed the light everywhere, even at sparkfall. Instead, I go mourning all day and flitting about the hollow space inside. In the marketplace, headless chickens hang against the closed dark of a butcher's shop. Past the gerrymandered edges of town, a farmer rowing the heated earth in the faint orange afterglow finds a fossilized rib cage. Should we be nostalgic, utopic? Under the light, now the light of eternity, the field 80 years on, still warmed by magma, the plates still grinding their bitter teeth. And now I have broken with the remnant of you that lived somewhere among the archives of my many selves, break so sudden that words flood the streets, the anabatic wind hunts, and the trees clutch their purses. Do you see it too? The way the details shake loose of their moorings, the way silence cannot suffice. Now it's you breaking with an image of me. Let me lean down to assist. What do the seeds know? I have a strange relationship with time. Just yesterday, an I in me stood eating pea soup and crusty bread with utensils owned by people we had forgotten while you waited for your predictions to resolve or dissolve. Some iteration world is always ending, even upon reasoned review, burning. Little is up in wings again as the sky is enumerated, the salted veins excavated for inspection and prayer, a form of protest we see and do not see ourselves there. We sway and nod, a drying sea. Is the sermon enough? Is it inimical? No one says I sent a packet of actions to the New Yorker. No one submits their liver to the Los Angeles Times. No one crawls toward the hovel or speaks the word. No one draws back the shroud. It's one foot, then the other, onwards. Pray with your legs, you're walking, and all I can do is to find the clearing, not even the threads of the threadbare story, and even here, the last rays of empire, when it's so easy to return hate with hate. The obscure light wraps itself around our heartened bodies and hums. We live in an unknown sea, city of secondary egresses or flightless egrets. Everything contains or radiates commentary. The V's above diminished, misplaced, north, south reduced, a redaction of climate. The trees move west, no handholds, no guardrails, but passengers suspended in the tiled light to the subway terminal. There is someone there, standing with one hand holding a bouquet in a hurry to apologize and stave off an ending, or hurried at the proposition of making love, or both, or anxious to hit the shrinking window of visiting hours at the hospital around the corner, or to make a daughter's first grade recital, or to reach Long Island cemeteries before rush hour. The sky we cannot see does not speak. It burns, it gnaws, tracks rust off into darkness. The bare concrete persists, but cracks, the footholds threaten to widen. Water seeps up from below, lost in a different darkness. Will we slip through into? Will the flashing shadows speak to us in another language? When you were younger, you stacked stones upon stones, placed some in your pocket in easy forgetfulness. Now they are too heavy to take out. I write a lot in sequences, a lot of serial poems. It's also kind of a homage to George Oppen. But I like what they allow me to do in terms of entering and leaving spaces and moments, but still connect them. I'm going to read a poem from the middle of the sequence. This is actually, so it's the title, it goes A, B, C, and this is B. B, when the clouds break to reveal a city of brick or glass. When the clouds break to reveal a city of brick, glass, steel girder, or tinted and tilted skies, coastline or seawall, surge. How can the market keep rising without a question mark? Is this too far afield for something so serious? I'm trying to come to the point. The antenna sends and receives. I'm trying to break your heart. The earth tides and the sea tides rise and subside incrementally or suddenly. We work and we compose. The conductor, he's weary. He's still stuck on the line and will be someday beyond us as the arc shuttles us along. glaciers fall to the ocean and take on a different identity. Why must we bear witness to believe, to return to the impossible, the point of departure? The train takes us to a city, once a forest, and a forest, once a city. We pass demolished buildings and rusted I-beams and rebars, spokes and cars stacked upon cars. We hope and alter little. We return to the terrestrial, the dark territory, the night terrors. The night sky stirs in retreat from the earth, a turbid string of starlight. We move in abundance. There are a lot of we's in my poem, but my poems are interested in investigating what we mean in some ways when we use the word we. Who's included, who's excluded, what's the position from which we speak. We move in abundance. It's a ridiculous argument, but my son stands his ground. Why can't he attach a balloon to a teacup and fly to New Jersey? Why is our neighbor's yard filled with dandelions and drift? Why do you own a house and not a home? Why do you mow the lawn and despise clover? It's bedtime. The fawn is speckled, tears the grass up so the roots dangle from the mouth. Does the gardenia sleep in the garden bed? Go to sleep. The stars, my God, go to sleep. And what about the column of air above, the water rights below? Why is the ground so hard even after rain? Why do I keep falling in love with words when words means less? Petrichor, petrichor, bless my children, Baruch, Baruch. What have years done to this poem? Catastrophe, upon catastrophe, each to each as layers of sediment desperately touch. Why is a bell ringing? Why do we long for a past we never lived or even visited, like tourists in Neil Young t-shirts staring into an Icelandic volcano? Why does my friend solder stained glass windows in his garage at night, fumbling with light? Why is a bell ringing? Why do we assume all the hives of my life exist somewhere still, as if I could walk into any one again and end somehow here? Why do I feel guilty for writing this poem, the privilege? What marks us, helps us, makes us legible, think other of us? Someone is playing a violin on the subway platform again. Someone has an open case of cast coins and a few fisted dollars. Someone has a litter of roses. Someone is holding hands with someone. Someone in white kicks tips upright on their toes to see the light pouring out from the tunnel. Someone headphones look like earmuffs. Someone is playing with a bow, gracefully easing along strings when the shooting begins again. People we know, don't know, scream, crouch, scatter, dive, cover heads, and fall. Do we experience the same violence? From the inside out, outside in, save it, and store it, and feed it to each other, wildly or gently as poison. The same table for passing conversation, same altar over passing prayer, bitter, brittle stone. My God, who is not mine or ours here? Some of us go on to bend down, tie our laces as torrents of people pour past. Some of us go on to lift up faces from the blue light of our phones, shift stream, go on to clamor out of dreams, climb stairs, and clatter into the evening air, float off like balloons, uniformly distinct, rendered and unredeemable, earthly and inhuman. The longest sequence in my book is the metaphorical heart, and I'm going to read the first section from the sequence. My son stops putting together a puzzle of the solar system to pronounce, I'm really stumped today, then asks, what has stumped me? Confused, stymied. What has confused me? For weeks, I couldn't read or watch TV after the photograph, the under-breathing boy on the beach, face down in the shallow surf, arms to his side and knees tucked slightly under the way a 3-year-old still toddles and stilted balancing steps sleeps. Bright red t-shirt, sneakers, hair neatly combed by the water. And above and wrapped in gray gauze, the sky yawned. The sky is quite hungry. The sky eats the clouds for dinner. My daughter riffs an extended soliloquy as she leaps from a couch to the hassock, scrambling to reach me. My son says, my heart is made to wave as I head out the door to work. My daughter replies, my heart is made of apples, as I bend to kiss her head. Maybe the metaphorical heart is supposed to ease the wound of disagreement with the open flesh of the world. Maybe its design is to lift us to repair. Maybe we're born singed and signed, though now maybe it's a galvanized steel pail hauled to the pasture with its bottom rusted out and the hard magma incinerating its way through the chest, eyes burning too, the horses thirsting beyond the barbed wire. This fails again. I'm sick of the spirit of capital, whole families shopping at night, aisles full of husbands, wives, and the avocados, babies, and the tomatoes, the logic of distraction, the logic of the uncanny at the center of this universe, that philosophical understanding, distance, of desire, of death, of drowning. Can I begin again without order, without reference, without image or idol? Can I carry you a while? Is my uselessness useful? I know that I can't speak for you. Really, all I ever wanted was to paint sunlight on the side of a barn. But I see what I see differently. The afterbirth of afterbirth. Breathes, stirs, his hair, inanimate words vibrate, clap as lit leaves pinwheel the elm again. The trick, I think, is to have each foot planted in a disparate present, each standing in deep and distant laceration. Dear reader, inside and out, are we afraid to know what I want to say, but not sure I have permission, as my son puts another piece of the sun together. This next poem is an elegy. It takes its title from a line from a Sam Cooke song. The song is called a riddle song, and I think elegies are often the kind of riddle. The poem also references a line that is often sung at the Passover Seder. And one of the things that happens as you get older is that the people who are kind of around your table when you're younger, they're no longer there. But in some ways, they still are there. And you grapple with that. So the poem is called I Gave My Love a Cherry That Had No Stone. The marble facade appears pear and pollen light, then orange. The peach ripens. Imagine a time-lapse terracotta pot on the sill above the radiator with a paned glass, clouds, white specks of vermiculite against the deep soil, the planted seed from which the green leaves unfurl, a pause, a compression, maybe a persimmons. Beyond, a Coast Guard cutter cuts whitewash. I'm a camera with a bug's eye, reverse course, take a course in oils, acrylic. See the wings struggling to close and the common wing hairs like scroll or parchment paper. Find the abode, present, butterfly exhibit. Fold each of us into each other. Who promises us telos? The night sky sifts down, darkening a small dot trees. The evening dusk lacks precision. Come down from the tinfoil loft onto the sidewalk to discover the green tempered shards, the busted out GM station wagon window. Brother, sister, we were too young and too loved to be frightened. Now the wharf, more creosote than wood, gestures across the river. Now dark clouds darken with red smoke. An expanse of fear spreads before us. The forest we live at a distance, temporal, temporary, and sometimes we suture endings together. I knew I should have flown to your funeral or your unveiling. I should have placed the stone still imprisoned in my pocket. I'm having trouble with revision. I never knew your other name. I'm second guessing my predilections, but you gave me permission. This is public and private, the family of property. The Holy One smote the angel of death, who slew the slaughter, who killed the ox, that drank the water, that extinguished the fire, that burned the stick. I stand where others stand. Sure, as we move, what did the mirror hold for you? Child encloses every flash of light and flick of dark in each room she touches. What did you unfold? Intend? Keep your hands off, you say. Stay out of the street, you say. Outside, a game of hopscotch erased by rain, a game of double dutch on hold. You had been running behind yourself this whole way. Now the tea light burns, the paper boat set upon the water, brown hint of smoke stretches until invisible. Now we wait our turn. Who plays you in the second act? Who do we serve? When do we eat the persimmons? Wash my hands and pull the blossoms right off the lower branches. How can there be a cherry that has no stone? Collage together vows that loose from the given image. Maybe we part with each other by stepping into another self. Is this the lesson from a distance? Maybe you gave me permission. And now the sky persists in its bearing, opal, pearl, rose quartz, or turquoise. This time I've traveled the whole day without touching its darker permeations, holding still in preparation. I got one more poem. It's called Neighbors 6. The book is structured around these neighbors poems that function like a spine for the book. It's a sequence. They all sort of play with the same kind of form around replacing and redacting. This has another epigraph from Martin Buber. O fragment of mica, looking on which I once learned for the first time that I is not something in me. Replace male with electrical socket, female with power plant. Rip through the drywall, wind the cord. I wish I was an umbilical. Too easy, too domestic, too binary. Insert a question where you're bonded, not strangled. Experience entanglement, redact post-bail. We use bailing wire to hold together the pallet compost bins. Purple sweet potato vines leaf out in spades, dangle through the slats, and begin to creep across the lawn. You said shadows tiptoe too. Hear the tinkering. Replace sense with sound. Hear the wind in the folds of the flag. Move the cat calling, caterwauling crowd. Students chant in t-shirts without t-shirts. Students chant slurs, a spectacle of intimidation they're selling postcards of. These are children smiling. Are these children? The diagnosis predicts a dicey, a disturbing, a runaway recovery. Replace diagnosis with daisies, daisies with fortune teller. Are you sure-footed? Find me, redact me, since I is failing, I is fleeting, I is missing, I is a place and another. We enter thick flies, warm melon rinds, the green sugar pumpkins return to half ripen. An ocean of grass opens before my daughter as she totters, redact the sea. The people sway or swayed. Which people are you? Redact the human view, the ledges and the rough sea seen from the road, the harbor. We are safe. Are we safe? We blasted bedrock, laid bare before, made roads from here to there and from there to here. Where is here? Replace where with when, replace safe with saved, replace saved with salve. I'm approaching you with eager tenderness. Try a little. I've seen you, arm pulling your casted daughter close, parroting hate. Replace hate with love. Is it real? Real to me. Replace me with you. I am writing my own extinction. I'm fixated on becoming a port. Plug in, replace he with she with he, they with they. Come closer down here. See the turtle bug, lovely parted shield of basil green, whose work dissolves our work, your work. Replace a cloud of birds with a squall of starlings. See the hidden reptile beak the earth. Refute prehistory. It is in us always. Redact always. See the grain and the granite, the flakes of mica. Replace the present with the ever-present presence of universal possession, west to east and east to west. We are the gathering of sea foam on the descending outcrop. We are the leaves drenched in sunlight and some Mars spinning through the air. Today, clarity. This is the sky. This is the crosswalk. I wanted to say the children, the bright children are bright, are laughing, are not frightened, are still children. You are not prepared to be you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. That was incredible. That was great. It's my usefulness usual. Our second reader is Charlotte Rose Samuels. And the first gift that Charlotte Rose Samuels remembers receiving was a teal plasticky notebook from the school nurse. Strange as it were, the arrival of the notebook did signify a watershed moment. Growing up in the shadow of significant mental health challenges, Charlotte began to feel solace in the spaces still yet to be explored, dreamed up, and understood. It was only through this impossibility, this potential energy, that Charlotte felt her mind quiet. To Charlotte, emptiness itself could be a vessel where one could seek one's own authenticity and truth. And here Charlotte discovered that taking on the unknown, less traveled road could also be an antidote to feelings of overwhelm or doubt or fear and guilt. Embodying a multitude of identities as a public health researcher, a writer, a watercolorist, and a soon-to-be nurse, Charlotte has come to find loving acceptance of her inability to fit into a singular mode. You can also find Charlotte's work in Sprung Formal and her collection Becoming Transient, New and Selected Pandemic Poems is available for pre-order. It'll be released on June 1st. Congratulations, Charlotte, on the release of the book. I will paste a link into the chat for that. And please welcome Charlotte Steng.
Hello. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, I just want to make sure that I'm not muted. Okay. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for reading, Daniel. That was amazing. I really loved, I wrote down like some things in particular, but I loved that all of the epigraphs that you chose for your poems were like also people that I admire a lot. And I really liked what you were saying about at the Seder table, how over time things change a lot. And for me, this new book that I'm producing, or collection of like kind of a multitude of different medias, both like watercolor and comics and sound, it really is like this kind of ever-changing thing the way like in our lives it seemed like you were describing too. So my upcoming book and collection will be kind of a culmination of documentations from like the first moments I remember of COVID, being sent home from college in my last year of college, and kind of everything that's developed after that. And then I was also thinking a lot about just like the sporadic places that were always in movement to and from. And my family wound up like relocating pretty far away. And my partner and I live in Philadelphia now, but just how quickly things can change in terms of where you are geographically. And I think COVID made the world feel really small, but also like very, very big. And this collection, putting it together, has really shown me like just how much has been encompassed through these years. And they're not necessarily lost years, but for me, they've been years that I've been able to actually like, take a breath and look at my life and realize like a lot of things that I was like putting, like hiding about myself, or how I wanted to express myself. So COVID did give me that opportunity. So I wanted to almost write like a tribute to that, and everyone else who was involved with that. And just one other thing I want to say is like, I think the way I would describe my poems, or the way that people have been describing my poems for a long time, is just like cryptic or like not really conventional. And I kind of always think I like did have that since I started harvesting my interest in writing as a young child. Like I would just write really weird, like funny stories, or yeah, things like that. And then meeting Marley, who's here right now, and she connected me to Jordan, and just becoming more involved with Kansas City Art Institute and this community over the years. And I just wanted to say thank you for giving me this opportunity to share. And I'm looking forward to kind of connecting my personal to the political and like public world as well. And I also like just encourage other people to do the same in terms of their own documentations. So the first poem I'm going to read is about a friend of mine. This is like one of my most recent poems. So I wrote it. She came to visit me recently, and we hadn't seen each other since this all went down in college. And yeah, so I just wrote it for her. So it's called Something Karmic. For Junko. Writers are always selling someone out, or so I think it went. These moments I wish I could record, if only to play back later, if only to get the specifics right. Fastening the lid onto her scorching drink with her tiny fingers. And to whom do these hands belong, if not the smallest person on earth? I don't take it lightly. Hands ripped and healed over and over in cliff climbing attempts. Hands callous, but somehow delicate and nimble enough to fasten meticulous fishing knots. She makes me wish I could implode on my own mercurial nature. At night, pondering the selection of questions to ask the next day, wondering about the answers I will procure. What's the darkest sky you've been beneath? Wait, I don't want to use a question on that. Don't answer. I think I already know. Last week, I thought I ran into a woman I missed so deeply, so profoundly at the local bank. Then the same thing happened later at the freezer section in Target. But these are places I know she would never be. Still, I have to stop myself from calling out to her. What if not for my lack of self-control? What is she thinking about right now? That glimmer in her dark eyes. The drink she ordered has been prepared with aromatic cardamom and foam. She lifts her eyes to meet mine. My next poem is going to be about something, it's kind of like a small story, I would say. This is from like, so I'm moving back in time. This is from like the summer of 2021. And I was very like very independent that summer, like making my own money in like a very good way. And like just it was a good time, except for that it was COVID. And then this happened. So I just wanted to explain a little bit about this poem, because it's kind of weird. It's just the story of something uncanny that happened. I think a lot of my poems do focus on like the uncanny or like misunderstood or mysterious. And yeah, so this is called What Moved Beneath. What moved beneath me was hard and textured and alive. I don't know how to say it. I explained to the 911 dispatcher. I could hear her breathing. So, do you need me to send an ambulance? No, 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 I kept saying, not that. I'm not the emergency. I don't want to cause mass hysteria, but something's not right. Whatever that was shouldn't have been there. And so many people are still in the water. Should I get them out? I'm at the beach directly over the first pedestrian walkway connected to the captain something. It has a long name. It connects Seabright to Sandy Hook, the rough surfing beach where the seawall ends. Do you know which one? I was thinking, hasn't she seen Jaws? You know, the Independence Day scene where the child and the dog become a midday snack. Doesn't she know that Amity Island is just the code word for Martha's Vineyard? We know less about the ocean than outer space. Let me connect you to the sheriff, ma'am. The phone crackled in my ear, where ocean water dripped into its crevices, and it struggled to maintain service on the national park island, which was once destroyed by the hurricane which wiped out our whole state. In an attempt for that to never happen again, a rugged seawall was constructed from boulders and cement to create a man-made visible barrier between the ocean and everything else. Resting on the ocean's horizon was a shadowy New York skyline in a haze of mauve clouds. A used surgical mask was lingering above the shore's sand in the warm breeze. A seagull appeared from nowhere and snatched it up, then flew away. This time we are living in, 2020. My eyes were still fixed on the spot of water where the moment had occurred. I had drawn an X in the sand with my foot upon my safe arrival to shore. Panicking and motioning to my best friend who was still floating on her back between the waves, urging her to move quickly back to the shore. But she was confused and concerned and looked at me as she made her way back through the strips of water. Sorry, I just lost my place. Oh, I could see the confused and concerned look on her face. And she didn't really know how to get through the rips. My body was shaking. My eyes were swelling up with tears and my heart was beating like a drum. I tried to explain as quietly and calmly as I could to her what had happened. Could she too hear my heart? Then her jaw dropped as I quietly said the words, something swam beneath me. And I pointed to my scratched leg, which was dripping with blood. A new look came into her eyes. She lifted her head to the sea. I kept expecting something to throw its body out of the water and reveal itself, but nothing did. Then there was a man's voice on the other end of the phone. We don't really have a protocol of what we do in this situation, ma'am. Currently, we're using all of our search and rescue capabilities to pull bodies from the rips. Can you explain again what happened and what you saw, what it looked like? And so I retold the tale of the textured and hard object, which I knew to be non-human and which I believed to be alive, how it had collided with my left calf while in a deep shelving rip current. I explained to the sheriff that I had spent countless consecutive hours in the ocean. I had collided with trash and sea stalks and wooden storm debris and sports equipment and carcasses, but this was different. I told the sheriff about the scrape on my leg, which proved to me that this was not an illusion or a break of schizophrenia. In desperation, he said, so what should we do? The surfers are way out there and their children are swimming right here where it happened. Then he said, but you can't say what it was, ma'am. And then he said what amounted to, we can do nothing. Can you imagine a color that doesn't exist on the spectrum? What does a creature look like when it doesn't come from Earth? What is your version of an afterlife, a before life? Louise Gluck, in her poem A Summer Garden, writes about her recollections of memory, melancholia, and time. In one section of the poem, she's reading a seemingly ancient annotated book when she comes upon a photograph of her mother literally covered in dust. Gluck writes, I had noted the page just in case. As Freud believed, nothing is an accident. How much have you really thought about what could be in the sea? Uncanny, uncanny, uncanny. Just a few weeks before, a student of mine had asked me if I too had seen the black discs in the town hovering in the sky, where she and all of her middle school friends had been documenting these on Snapchat. When I inquired as to what she meant, she didn't seem very alarmed by the disc's occurrence. I saw it with my own eyes, she said. Because I did not have a visual description of the encountered object, the sheriff and the dispatcher from 911 could do nothing. No one was sent over that day to examine what might have been in the water. Don't you know that our eyes deceive us? Asked my favorite professor in South Africa. The power was out during the load shedding. It was summer, which was winter, weeks before the election, and load shedding was occurring regularly in our school above the gas station. The windows were open and the lights streamed in. We traced our bodies in paint and wrote secrets and symbols on the insides of their shapes. But my skin is bleeding, I pleaded to the sheriff. The call was static and far away. The crashing waves of the high tide fought over my voice. My mother, a historical novelist writing about our family's immigration from Sicily and their early time in America, which resulted in a tenement fire that killed just about everyone. But her grandfather used to believe that she needed to get all the facts right in order to do the story justice or to be able to write the story at all. This was increasingly difficult because most of the people in the story were dead or mute or estranged. She was writing the story years in the future. My mother is brilliant. She researched endlessly, studying genealogy and archives and legal documents, and found herself at a dead end until she realized that the truth does not always set you free. She said, I must learn to braid myself into the emotions of someone I will never know. Yet that someone is my everything. She is the nucleus of the story, the heart, the battery. She is the main character, my ancestor, death by fire, a family curse and generations upon generations interlinked. And I give her a voice, and she gives me a voice. When I had somewhat recovered from these events, I drove 2 hours in the dark to get home, sipping Wawa coffee much too sweet, but that's the only way they make it. They don't have a Wawa where I'm from, and I don't like hot coffee, only iced. I was trying not to fall asleep at the wheel because I'm apparently a bad driver in the dark. I used to fall asleep during just about everything, but I'm very glad that doesn't happen anymore. On the parkway, it was too dark outside to have any shadows. I passed by New Jersey marshes and Philadelphia, the city of my future. When I got home, I was buzzed on caffeine and I was learning to brew kombucha with my new SCOBY, a gift from an avid fermenter in my hometown. I held the SCOBY in my hands and remembered where I used to live in Western Massachusetts, and a woman from my church with her kind blue eyes and her baby daughter told me a story about a septic laceration on her knee while out on a solo biking trip in rural Brazil. She said, I happened to have a SCOBY with me and I just knew I needed to put it on my knee. And so then I taped it on my knee overnight, and in the morning, all the red streaks were gone. I was saved. I remembered the feeling beneath me again and felt a cold chill run down my body from my ears to my toes. I felt lucky for an assortment of reasons, and I placed the SCOBY at the top of the mixture and put it in the best dark warm corner in the house we lived in. Kareem texted me, "You need to check this out. Go to thispersondoesnotexist.com." An AI has now been trained to create faces of human beings, cats, and horses. The humans are more realistic than the cats are, and the cats are more realistic than the horses are. Some are outrageous, Kareem said. They don't look like real people at all. There always seems to be one thing off. If there's more than one person in the frame, the AI can't do it. It mangles one face and it creates a total distortion. But some are perfect. They look completely real and you wouldn't even question it. I clicked on the link. A woman who appeared to be in her late 50s popped up on the screen wearing red with grayish hair and a fuzzy white line near her chin, which I assumed was one error on the part of the AI. I clicked another and a child manifested on the screen. His teeth were slightly crooked, like he needed braces, but he wasn't old enough to get them yet. Then another, a man with glasses who looked like an incel who worked at Best Buy. None of these people exist, and yet there they are. I don't need to close my eyes or be in a body of water to remember the movement beneath me in the waves. But I think it happened for some reason. Like Louise Gluck said, consider living your life like nothing is an accident and you will remember everything and take intentionality in every step. But that's what makes this hard. Take the word encounter, usually paired with negative happenstance, something difficult or hostile, a police encounter, a sexual assault encounter with the supernatural, not a door opening, not supposed to be. Perhaps nothing happens by accident, so just in case, my mind still fills it in. The object beneath me, dark with skin like sandpaper, moving quickly back into the deep. Dark like the outside of a heavy, powerful machine. My father now believes the encounter to have been with a sand shark. The sheriff believes it to be a broken piece of a pier or scrap metal from a ship headed in or out of the New York harbor. I don't know what I believe, but I know it wasn't meant to be there, and yet at the same time, in all of the cubic feet of the sea and our undiscovered earth, there it was beneath me. And it moved, and I truly believe it was alive. And I moved swimming as fast as I could to the shoreline, and we parted and I was changed. An encounter, a brush, a contact, unexpected as a flash flood in the desert. The lines between real and not real don't delineate with a visual image. The sheriff was not in the water. No one else knows what I felt. I don't have the right words to describe it. Preserved in the riptides off Sandy Hook under an orchid-colored sky. Two rivers, but they flow to different oceans. Two rivers, but they meet and diverge at several banks and bends along the way. They must meet and part cyclically before they know their destiny. Never knowing the true end until it occurs or doesn't, which makes it all the more complicated. This is called the journey. The idea of not knowing and flowing on in the oblivion is called the mystery. There are banks and bends where herons go to watch over their young, and children swim with their eyes open underwater to see colors only they can see, and swans spread their wings to reveal feathers dirtied by the harsh metals which flow abundantly through both rivers. Everything has an origin. Have you considered there are bad things you do not know yet that have the same origin as you? Did you know fishing is bad karma? My best friend said between bites of her flounder sandwich. We had stopped for dinner now on our way home. Men were waiting in the dark water of the Navasink River next to our picnic table with lights on their heads and nets in their hands. I could not see what had been caught in the nets, but I could hear movement in the dark water beneath. It reminded me about my excruciating fear of dying, my paramount excitement for banal living and its memory, though never perfect. The water fell from the men. and their nets as they cleared their bodies and the bodies of their catches from the river. The lights on their heads shone on the surface of the black water and the black sky, and you were blinded. Once I wanted to work on a deep sea fishing boat off in the waters off Alaska, but my hands get much too cold. I wanted to swim above the most gaping stretch of the Mariana Trench just to know it was the deepest. Horror must be paired with burning hot anticipation. The hard part is wondering if you'll make it. Two rivers, but they flow to different oceans. Two oceans singing, how we want to touch, if only we could touch, if we could meet again. I'm not sure about time because I know that one was a bit long, but I do want to read maybe one or two more poems. So this is a poem that I wrote on my 24th birthday this year. I've been dealing a lot with like shame and kind of guilt about certain things that have happened. I know everybody deals with those things, but this poem is about that. So it's called 24th Birthday. Where can I go with my shame? Its entropy, like an engine or a spinal cord. The fire ignites whatever touches it, even and especially if unplanned. The fire doesn't understand, doesn't honor extenuating circumstances. It lights anything it can. All I've thought about in the screeching flames is how horrible the sensation of being burned like this feels. The skin melting off of me. How the fire became almost human in its greediness. No time. I didn't think about my own life or my death or my family upstairs, my neighbors, my documents. All it takes is a sleight of hand to conjure up the flame. All it takes is a rat without malice to burn a good house down to the ground, if provided the right materials. But can't we all, wherever I go with my shame. Okay, and then maybe this is the second to last that I'll read. This is about randonauting, which was really popular in the beginning of the pandemic among like a lot of young people. Randonauting is like this app that studies entropy, and it brings you to a place, like a spot on the map where it feels like there's like some sort of chaos, and you're supposed to wish for a certain intention before you make your decision to go or like select the point. So this is just one of the journal entries that I wrote about randonauting, which occurred in the beginning of the pandemic. So it's called Thurston Terrace, Intention, Beauty, and Mystery. I was spooked all night after reading about what it meant to randonaut herb. Some said that the app itself brought bad energy and encouraged others to delete it right away. I don't fuck with that, was the common consensus on the subreddit and so many other subreddits warning. I was resisting falling asleep with the app on my phone, but I had had some Chilean wine and so I forgot. And I felt pretty scared. In the morning, there was a dark cloud which hung overhead and it never got bright like day. I set off to a new location. It appeared to be in Glenrock. The street was the one where Bridget used to live, the street that backed up to the middle school. Once I wrote a story about Bridget and her epilepsy, but it got me in trouble. Now look at this virus, so invisible and silent, capable of machine death. The house was gray and it reminded me of Buffalo, journeying through the fields where my dad used to wander as a child. Fields and fields, unchanging and overgrown, hopping fences. It seemed no one was home, but of course, there was really no way to know. A warm light glimmered on the stoop. I had asked for beauty and mystery. Okay, and then this is probably the last poem that I'll read. This is about another occurrence that happens. This was during Thanksgiving with my partner. We were in California, and that's kind of like all you need to know. Okay, it's called Fire Tonight. for Kareem, my partner. I can still smell the plastic burning outside my window. I can hear a woman's shaky voice, but it's hard to make out what it is that she is saying. Then enters the voice of a second character. It is the voice of a man and it mumbles profanities. My hands are already somewhere in the flames, but my flesh is unchanging, almost as if it's resistant to fire. But I know better. With my hands in the flames, I thought to myself, what material am I wearing tonight? But this hand is unfamiliar. It goes numb. It bursts into flames, trying to clarify its texture. I remember in lucidity a memory of another, long, long ago. An elderly woman next door was burned alive by her own gas stove. There she stood like a Christmas tree with real candles in her melting polyester nightgown. Afterwards, we found out the woman and the man were new parents, and apparently this baby of theirs was somewhere in the house. Even now, I am standing at the sink thinking of the laws of fire. If you open the chimney vent, the fire grows. And you're meant to do this when and only when the fire is still beginning. Earlier at the grocery store, I heard someone complaining about the Santa Ana winds. Apparently, these winds were so strong they could make palms topple over like dominoes. As she speaks, I try not to look annoyed, but it's cringeworthy. My disgust with their incorrect, dramatic information about meteorology. I remember a commonly known fact that theirs is a vegetation subject to a unique flammability, capable of more destruction than any other vegetation. I thought you were a robber, says the woman in her own distinct language. Upon closer look, she is panting like a dog. I chuckle. I don't mean to make her feel bad, but it's funny. I'm thinking of a little known fact, a fact so rare, it's only known by you and me. You created from nothing circuits of streets. You strung them out in your mind's eye, or at least I like to think you did. I try to call to mind the name of the street you drove idly by, but it's hard to remember the name of something like that. I try to call to reason how this maze of anger brought us to this particular fire on this particular night. Once I had a feeling about the letter K. As a letter, it seemed completely and plausibly evil. I wondered if it was the breeze of childhood synesthesia, but upon further research, I learned that others felt this way too. As you ran towards the stucco house, I thought of your fermenting anger, even imagining it made something burn in my throat. I thought of something infinite, how much I knew about the truth and how much I could never. In the dream I've had 1001 times, it was you who I remembered, and you who ran into the flames so decidedly, so undoubtedly, and even after the flames have been extinguished to nothing, even after you turned the corner of Beethoven and something. I noticed my feet on the dashboard, covered in ash, my head in my hands, cursing because I know how this story ends. Yes, I think that will be all I'm reading today. Just lastly about that last one was my partner and I were just taking a drive and we happened to come across like a house that was on fire. So we had to I feel like I reacted really slowly, but my partner was just out of the house banging on the door and saying like, your house is on fire, your house is on fire. So kind of just wanted to shed light on some of these things that have happened. And I think also writing them into existence makes it so that more of those things can happen too, which is like both good and bad. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. And thank you, Daniel, for reading with me. And thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. That was wonderful. I love the line, "I'm not the emergency," the reminder of that. Let me find a way to add here Daniel to the spotlight as well, so I can I can ask you all some questions, and if anyone has some questions, please put it in the chat. I think we could spend a good, it's a little after 4 now, about 10 minutes or so to 4:15, not long. But I found something really interesting when it came to questions in your work, both of you. I mean, Charlotte, you said early on, I don't want to use a question on that. Like, wait, I don't want to use a question on that. And then, Daniel, your work was so about questions, moving from the child's questions into the father or the adult's questions and the endless questions. Remind me of Edmund Jabe's a bit, his book of questions. So I'm wondering, compositionally, how, and this is a question I think for you, Daniel, and also Charlotte, I've got one for you compositionally as well. But Daniel, how do questions propel your poems, or how do you structure your poems either around questions or in response to questions? And then Charlotte, my question for you when it comes to composition is, what's your typical process of composition? Because it feels like, you had these lovely breakthroughs of laughter when you would read, and I could feel like that you were back in the event. Like you were there again, and you were just filled with the event. And I'm wondering if that's something you go home and write about immediately afterwards, or if it's notes, or if you have an incredible memory, which could be a blessing and a curse. So composition, those are the things I want to ask you all, and I'm always curious about the tricks within your work and what allows the work to come together. So whoever wants to go first, feel free.
All right, I guess I'll go first. I actually was intrigued by a lot of what Charlotte was doing in her work too, in the way it felt so autobiographical, but also there was a distance from things, like they would move in and out of that. And I'm intrigued by that in part because it took me a long time, my own work, to be able to write about things that were close to me. I had to give myself permission. So one of the things I talk about with young writers often is like giving yourself permission to write about things. But in terms of the question, one of the things I kind of felt early, I guess early on as I was writing, is I stopped using question marks because I felt like everything has the air of a question around it. So what is the point of a question mark? I guess in a sense, it's signaling something that's already there. So in my book, I don't use question marks at all. In part, then it raises the question of what is a question, and which moment is a question, which moment is not. And so, my writing is really associational, and that's sort of my compositional method. But it's not associational sort of purely in terms of content, but also form and sound. So in that sense, from a compositional perspective, I'm interested in the leaps of logic that always leave out something, right? Because our leaps of logic are often like, they're both social, but they can also be intensely personal. And so there's always something with the question embedded in that, right? I mean, every time we communicate with somebody else, there's always the hope of actual exchange and dialogue. But that dialogue is often fraught, even the best ones, with our intention versus what is received. Right? So I'm fascinated perpetually with questions, in part because I believe in certain things. I also question those beliefs continuously. It's sort of just, I don't know, the process of my makeup. So I'm always incorporating that into my work, and that's sort of, I learned sort of to I guess early on I started focusing on incorporating the process of writing into writing rather than sort of keeping that outside. So anytime I had a question, I would just sort of include it in the work rather than sort of act as if I had already solved it. I was trying to write against those kind of works that turn, and they're like these kind of beautifully wrought urns that sort of feel like there's an epiphany, everything's realized. but it's like, what's the moment before that and what's the moment after that? So I'm trying to sort of incorporate it all into the poem. That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it makes total sense. And I think, I could hear that sound, and the way sound was like a spooling device to maybe, I not as a preventative to rush in and answer the question. It kind of allows you to be in that state of disturbance or unsettledness, where sound can kind of, I was thinking about this on my walk today, where music allows us to make sense of time, but also be quite aware that time is fleeting. That, it has that duality of saying you're in this duration, but the duration is moving past you faster than you may want, but you're in a state of pleasure. So yeah, I think I could totally feel the cadence of the way that it would allow for you to get away from the question directly into this prismatic exploration of it. No, that makes perfect sense. Charlotte, your compositional strategy. I loved what you said. The question of I think it was referring to your mother. I need to learn to braid myself into someone I will never know. I love that. And it reminded me of George Oppens of Being Numerous and the idea of the shipwreck of the
Thank
singular.
you.
Yeah, I think
Means a
it's
lot.
so yeah. What a composition for you? I mean, where does it live?
Yeah, so I'm really inspired. I just want to say up front by CD Wright. She's like my icon. So for me, like I just really was so intrigued with her work, reading it early on too, because she just like, and same with Eileen Miles actually. They both use like real people's names. They don't shy away from the fact that like, truth is so many things, and like this is my perspective and this is my story. And then I became really involved with stories, and also with I thought it was weird that there was something kind of going on in my own life with my own family. Like my mom is also a writer, and with her, like, so there was like a cyclical thing going on too with that. And I just wanted to be able to both kind of like make that into something else, like kind of filter it through myself and make it into something else, but then also document everything that I could. And early on, like I was writing in my bio, I was so obsessed with documenting everything. I was so scared something was going to get away from me. And then now I feel like the role that writing plays in my life is much more like, it's almost like an undercurrent to everything. And I feel like it comes across in like even how I communicate with other people. And then with what you were asking about the humor thing, it actually means a lot that you said that, because I think for me this past year, like I've really needed to use humor to protect myself, and not even like making jokes about myself or something, but using humor in order to like lighten super heavy situations that I found myself in. And also using humor kind of to soothe and heal myself. And I feel like that's a big thing of like meme culture and stuff too. But I have just such an appreciation for being able to incorporate that now, because I used to think like poetry writing should only be one way, it should only sound perfect, it should only like everything. When really like to me poetry is just like a reflection almost of how I'm like understanding my life and the things in it. And I think also I really liked what both of you were saying about like the duality and like paradoxical nature of both perceiving and then writing about something, or sort of like how it goes through you before you're able to make it into something else. But yeah, I think my work winds up becoming kind of autobiographical, but I want it to feel a bit distorted too, so that like the memory is never exactly what I'll remember in my head. But I'm also just very interested in memory too, and like memory palaces and that kind of stuff. And I feel like a lot of that is in dialectics, because like how can you remember the exact truth of something, and there's always two sides of the story kind of thing.
Charlotte, do you write immediately after the experience, like the shark in the water, or was it the pier, or was it I don't know about aliens
Yeah,
necessarily, but or do you wait or what is it? Is
it's
it
so
immediately after?
for me it really depends. Like I've actually gotten really into recording now. So like I'll just like a lot of times like leave myself a message for the future kind of thing. But with the question of like what moved beneath that was something that like was just so out of nowhere, and like I almost had to write about it after, and like that's why I incorporated the part about the these are not real people like thing. However, there are other things that I feel like I am still trying to understand how to write about them, and like they're extremely difficult, even though I know all of the details, even though I know I can make a beautiful picture of it. Like, but I feel like it's almost like what you were saying, Daniel, about like you like distance yourself from it too. So on one hand, it's like yeah, again, like with meme culture, like really inappropriate, almost like you're in like this you're like filtering something in like a really inappropriate way in order to process it. And I feel like that also goes into like what I want to do with my work as like a nurse, and like just someone in the health and wellness world is like not everything you've been told is true. And so like let's
Right.
find what works for you. And I feel like writing should be the same way, and all creation should be the same way. Yeah, so
Oh, that's great. I want to I could ask 13 other questions right now, but I want to respect everyone's time, and I want to ask this question that I've asked everyone who's read remotely, and maybe I'm hoping it'll be the last time I have to ask this question. I don't know if that'll be true. We'll have to see how the variants play out. But could you leave us all with one thing that's brought you joy during the pandemic? And that could be a movie you've watched, or an album you've listened to, or a poem, or an experience that you didn't do before, that you're doing now, or that you found. Something that you could say, go out and see this, or do this, or perhaps experience this. A type of recommendation for joy, I guess, is what I'm looking for. Just one thing. And I'm talking on long so you can think about it. But that's something that I always want to leave people with. So who wants to go first? Charlotte, you want to go?
Yeah, I just
Okay.
immediately thought of the thing I've been thinking of. For me, like I had this dream that I was like gonna take the train across the country, and like somehow it worked out, and that was the most incredible experience. Like not only with like just being on the train and like these places that no one's gonna ever go to otherwise, like or see otherwise, but just the people I met along the way. And I went alone, so like I feel like I was really open and like perceptive to a lot of things, and just like painting with like strangers on the train, and it's a super affordable way to go across the country too. So yeah, and like there was a moment too where I got to see my friend. Like we had little stops at each like at different cities, and I got to see my friend for like literally 7 minutes, and they were there, and like it was just so special, and just that whole journey. So I recommend Amtrak. It's called the California Zephyr.
The California Zephyr. That sounds perfect. Sold.
Yeah.
Sold.
Okay.
Daniel.
Yeah. I don't know if this is something that I wasn't doing before, but I listen to a lot of podcasts. I think a lot of people do, but in the pandemic, I walk more, and
Me too.
the beginning of the pandemic was a strange experience because people were off from or were home, and it's actually my kids were home from school, I was home, and my wife were home, so we were walking a lot and together as a family, like in the middle of the day, which was kind of wonderful. But anyway, I've been listening to podcasts a lot, and this is not original or anything, but if you haven't listened to the podcast On Being, it's a fantastic podcast that sort of runs the gamut of from spiritual thinkers to writers, to scientists to poets, and its focus obviously has its sort of on spirituality, but it brings together so many different strands. It's kind of fascinating to listen to, and there's always something there, I think, for someone.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that podcast. There was one recently, I think, on a professor out in Irvine about how he perceived reality, and his well, I can't remember his name. I wish I could, but he says really it's a desktop. everything are symbols on the desktop, and that's how we interface with reality. I can't remember his name right now, but he has a really interesting theory on consciousness, and he's a professor at UC Irvine. Anyway, thank you so much. I'm going to shut shop and just shut up in a second, but there's not going to be any more readings in the spring. I'll resume in the fall. And so thank you all for coming. If you are not already a part of the Common Sense Facebook page, you can join there and stay up on any readings that will be happening in the fall and the spring. There'll be some great ones coming through, and I'm trying to think about a way to maybe even record the ones that are on campus at KCAI for those who are remote, and you can check those out as well, because I think this is one benefit of this whole pandemic is this technology and the use of it. And as horrible as screens can be, they also are really, I just feel blessed to have them in this capacity, because I can hear you all read, and I can feel the essence of you all. So thank you for your lovely reading. Thank you all for coming. Have a great rest of your day. Now you've got the rest of your day to go back in the world after listening to these great readers, these great writers. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for having
Thank you.
me. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.